Your trip has begun. Wrong car.
Imagine this. It's late. You're alone on a dark street corner staring at your phone, waiting for that familiar car to pull up. A car arrives. The driver smiles. You check the make and model. It matches. You get in. And it's only when the doors are locked and the car starts moving in the wrong direction that you realize the license plate was one digit off. Today, we are sharing 3 true, terrifying stories of the modern urban nightmare: the imposter, the predator, the fake Uber driver. It is a horror that preys on our trust in technology and our exhaustion at the end of a long night. It's that small, nagging doubt we've all been taught to ignore. Is this the right car? Is that the same person from the picture? It's the terrifying split-second realization that you have just willingly placed your life into the hands of a complete stranger with a dark and hidden agenda. It is the ultimate violation of a system designed for safety, a modern-day boogeyman hiding in plain sight. But these predators have a playbook. They have tactics. By exploring these real chilling accounts, from the cancel and pay cash trick to the detour sold as a shortcut, we will expose the red flags and the subtle traps. These stories are more than just terrifying cautionary tales. They are a necessary field guide to surviving the modern city, a lesson in trusting your gut over the convenience of an app. Now, before we start the ride, make sure you are subscribed to Whispered Fear and have activated the bell. You'll want to make sure you always know who's really behind the wheel.
Wrong car.
Our first story is about the terrifying vulnerability of travel and the quiet, implicit trust we place in a name on a screen. It comes from a woman named Sarah, a young architect who learned that in the chaotic, anonymous world of an airport pickup zone, the most dangerous predator isn't the one who stands out, but the one who fits in perfectly. The one who comes to you with a warm smile, a helping hand, and your own name on a sign, a name they were never supposed to know. At 27, Sarah's life was a blueprint waiting to be built. She was a brilliant but deeply anxious junior architect at a small, respected firm in Chicago. For 2 years, she had been the lead designer on a small but critically acclaimed library project in the Oak Park neighborhood. That one perfect project had become her calling card, a testament to her talent. It had led to this moment, a final in-person interview for her dream job, a position at the world-renowned architecture firm, Gary Partners in Los Angeles. This wasn't just a job interview. It was an audition for her entire future. It was the culmination of every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of her creative soul. The pressure was immense, a constant, low-grade hum of terror beneath her carefully constructed facade of professional calm. Her journey from Chicago O'Hare to LAX was a blur of nervous energy. She spent the entire 5-hour flight reviewing her portfolio, her notes, her talking points, the drone of the jet engines, a soundtrack to her anxiety. When she finally landed, at LAX, the familiar sprawling beast of an airport, she was exhausted but wired. She did everything right. She followed the signs to the chaotic but designated LAX Rideshare pickup lot. She opened her Uber app. The screen glowed with the familiar, comforting interface. A driver was assigned. David, in a black Toyota Camry, license plate 7BXR429. The app told her to meet him in Zone C. She stood in the designated zone, a small island of order, in a sea of chaotic, honking traffic and 1,000 other tired, anxious travelers all staring at their phones, all waiting for their digital chariot to arrive. She scanned the sea of black cars, her eyes searching for the license plate, the one, true, verifiable piece of data that would connect her to her safe ride home, or, in this case, to her hotel, the Viceroy in Santa Monica, a place she had chosen for its quiet, beachfront serenity. It was then that she saw him. He was not in a car. He was standing near the edge of the pickup zone, a man in his late 40s, dressed in a simple but professional black suit. He was calm, a small island of professional stillness in the chaos, and he was holding a tablet. On the screen of the tablet, in a clean, elegant sans-serif font, was a single word: Sarah. A wave of profound relief washed over her. In the chaos of the pickup lot, in the sea of 100 identical black cars, here was a beacon. A man who was looking for her. It was a higher level of service, a personal touch she hadn't expected. It was a sign, she thought, that her life was finally moving into a new, more professional, more rarefied tier. She walked towards him, a small, grateful smile on her face. "I'm Sarah," she said. The man smiled back, a warm, reassuring, and utterly trustworthy smile. "Of course you are," he said, his voice a calm, smooth baritone. "David. Welcome to Los Angeles. Tough flight?" "You have no idea," she laughed, the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease for the first time all day. He took her heavy suitcase from her without being asked, his movements smooth and practiced. "My car is just over here," he said, gesturing to a sleek black Toyota Camry, parked in a nearby spot. It was perfect. The name matched. The car matched. The feeling was one of profound and deeply misplaced trust. She did not check the license plate. The name on the sign had been enough. It had been the perfect psychological key unlocking a door that should have remained bolted shut. She got in the back seat. The car was immaculate. It smelled of leather and a faint, clean, citrusy air freshener. He placed her suitcase in the trunk and got in the driver's seat. "Okay," he said, turning to her, his smile still warm. "The app is being a little glitchy with the airport's Wi-Fi. It happens all the time here. I'm just going to start the trip manually on my end once we get onto the main road." "Is the destination still the Viceroy in Santa Monica?" "Yes, it is," she said. It was a logical, plausible explanation. The app was often glitchy. He knew her destination. He was a professional. She settled back into the comfortable leather seat, a profound sense of relief washing over her. She was safe. She was on her way. They pulled out of the chaotic pickup lot and merged onto Sepulveda Boulevard, the roar of the airport giving way to the hum of the city. He was a good driver, his movements calm and efficient, and he was a good conversationalist. He asked her about her flight, about her work, about Chicago. He was charming, intelligent, and deeply, disarmingly normal, the perfect, anonymous, and trustworthy vessel to carry her from one point to another. They were on the I-405, the infamous San Diego freeway, heading north when he first deviated from the script she had in her head. He said, his voice a casual, helpful tone. "You know, the 405 is a parking lot this time of night. There's an accident up ahead near the Getty Center. I know a shortcut. A back way through the neighborhoods. It'll save us a good 30 minutes. Is that okay with you?" "Of course," she said, grateful for his local knowledge. "Whatever you think is best." He took the next exit, onto a street she didn't recognize. The wide, brightly lit expanse of the freeway was replaced by the narrower, darker streets of a residential neighborhood. They drove through a quiet, sleeping world of beautiful, expensive-looking homes in Bel Air and Beverly Hills. The shortcut seemed to be working. But then, the beautiful homes began to thin out. The streets grew darker, the houses smaller, more spread out. They were heading west, into the winding canyon roads of the Santa Monica Mountains. The city lights began to disappear, replaced by a profound and deeply unsettling darkness. A small cold knot of anxiety began to form in her stomach. She asked, her voice a little too high. Are you sure this is the right way?" he said, his voice still calm, still reassuring. "Absolutely. Just a few more turns. The traffic on the Pacific Coast Highway is always a nightmare. This way, we pop out right at the back of Santa Monica. It's the locals' route." But the route kept getting more remote. The road was now a narrow, two-lane blacktop, twisting through a dark, silent canyon. There were no more houses, no more streetlights, just the dark, impenetrable chaparral on either side of the road and the endless inky blackness of the night sky above. The logical explanations were beginning to wear thin. This was no longer a shortcut. This was a detour into nowhere. She took out her own phone, her hands trembling slightly. She opened her Uber app, and she felt the world fall out from under her. The app showed a map of LAX, and her driver, the real David, was still there. A small blue car icon sitting in the pickup zone. The trip status read, "Driver is on their way." Below it was a series of messages from the real David, each one a small digital cry into the void. "Here at Zone C, where are you?" In 9:15 p.m., "Having trouble finding you. Are you still at the terminal?" 9:20 p.m., "I'm going to have to cancel the trip if you don't show in the next 2 minutes. Sorry." 9:25 p.m., "Trip canceled. Passenger no-show." 9:27 p.m. She stared. At the screen, her mind a screaming, white-hot blank of pure terror. The man who was driving her through this dark, deserted canyon, the man with the kind, reassuring voice, the man who knew her name. He was not David. He was a stranger, a predator, a fake Uber driver. She looked up from her phone, her eyes meeting his in the rearview mirror. And in that moment, the mask fell. The warm, friendly smile was gone, replaced by a look of cold, flat, and utterly terrifying amusement. He had seen her see. The game was over. He said, his voice no longer the smooth, calm baritone, but a low, gravelly sound that was a stranger to her ears. "So, you figured it out. I was wondering how long it would take," she whispered, her voice a dry, ragged thing. "Who are you?" "What do you want?" he said, his eyes still locked on hers in the mirror. "What I want is to teach a lesson. About privacy. About the illusion of safety in our new, shiny, digital world." He slowed the car, pulling over onto a dirt turnout overlooking the dark, silent canyon. He killed the engine. The sudden, absolute silence was deafening. He continued, turning around in his seat to face her. "You see, Sarah, people are so careless these days. They log into the unsecured public Wi-Fi at the airport. They use the same simple password for their airline booking that they use for their hotel reservation, for their Rideshare app. They create a beautiful, convenient, and completely interconnected digital life, and they leave the door wide open." He held up his Imando's own tablet, the one that had displayed her name. He tapped the screen. It was not a simple welcome sign. It was a sophisticated piece of software, a program that was, at that very moment, mirroring her entire digital life. Her emails, her text messages, her social media, her bank accounts, it was all there. He said, his voice the calm, detached tone of a professor giving a lecture. "The airport Wi-Fi is a hunting ground, Sarah. It's so easy to set up a rogue access point, a honeypot. People connect, thinking it's the official LAX-free Wi-Fi, and in that single careless click they give me everything. I get their names, their flight numbers, their destinations. I get their passwords. I get their lives." He was not a kidnapper. He was not a robber. He was a ghost. A digital ghost who had stepped out of the machine and into the real world. He was a white-hat hacker, a security consultant, a man who had been hired by a private, corporate security firm to test the vulnerabilities of the very systems that were supposed to keep people like her safe, she whispered, a new and deeply humiliating kind of fear washing over her. "This has all been a test?" "A demonstration," he corrected. "A very effective one, I think. A report will be sent to your company's security division in the morning. Detailed report on the vulnerabilities of their traveling executives." He started the car. "Don't worry," he said, his voice returning to its calm, professional tone. "I'll take you to your hotel now. The real one." He drove her in a profound and deeply unsettling silence, the rest of the way to Santa Monica. He pulled up in front of the Viceroy, its warm, inviting lights a beacon of a reality she was no longer sure she belonged to. He got out, retrieved her suitcase from the trunk, and placed it on the curb. "Have a good stay, Sarah," he said, his face once again the mask of a polite, anonymous driver. "And in the future, be more careful about the Wi-Fi you use." And then he got back in his car and drove away, disappearing into the night, leaving her alone on the sidewalk. A ghost in her own, hijacked life. She never took the job. She couldn't. She flew back to Chicago the next day. The dream, the future she had been so sure of, had been built on a foundation of a safety that she now knew was a complete and utter illusion. She is left with a quiet, chilling, and deeply modern knowledge. She knows that the most dangerous predators are not the ones who come at you with a weapon. They are the ones who come at you with your own name. The ones who use your own. Careless trust is a key to unlock your entire world, and she is haunted by a final and deeply unsettling question. How many other hunters are out there right now, sitting in the quiet, digital anonymity of 1,000 different airports, just waiting for the next tired, distracted, and beautifully trusting traveler to log on?
Don't worry, I know a shortcut.
Our next story is about the quiet digital safety net that we all take for granted. It's about the thin, invisible tether of a GPS signal, the simple, profound trust we place in a stranger's car. It comes from a young woman named Maya, a graduate student who learned that the most dangerous words you can hear from a rideshare driver are not a threat, but a friendly, helpful suggestion. Why don't you just cancel the trip and pay me in cash? She learned that the moment you go off the books, you also go off the map. At 24, Maya's life was a carefully balanced equation of ambition and exhaustion. She was a PhD candidate in computational biology at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, a world of complex algorithms and the quiet, beautiful logic of genetic code. Her days were a grueling marathon of research, of teaching assistant duties, of a constant low-grade pressure to publish. Her life outside the lab was a small, quiet affair. A tiny but beloved apartment in the leafy academic neighborhood of Squirrel Hill, and a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, Ben, who was finishing his own degree in Chicago. Her life was a holding pattern, a series of sacrifices made in the present for the promise of a future she was meticulously building. Her one consistent vulnerability was her commute. She didn't own a car. The city's bus system was her lifeline, but for her late-night study sessions at the Mellon Institute Library, her only safe way home was an Uber. It was a small, but significant, drain on her tight graduate student budget, a weekly calculation of safety versus solvency. The night her world was breached began with a simple common act, a final push to meet a deadline. It was a cold, rainy Thursday in November. She had been at the library since noon, locked in a 17-hour battle with a particularly difficult data set. By 3 a.m., her mind was a numb fog of statistics and caffeine. The library was closing, its warm, quiet halls now pushing her out into the cold, sleeping city. She packed her laptop, sent a quick, tired, "Good night, love you" text to Ben, and began the familiar ritual of summoning her digital chariot. She stood under the stone archway of the Mellon Institute on Fifth Avenue, the cold, misty rain a shock after the dry warmth of the library. She opened her Uber app. The screen glowed, a small blue beacon in the dark. A car was 5 minutes away. A silver Honda Civic, driven by a man named Gary, with a 4.9-star rating. License plate JGL8431. She watched the small car icon on her screen make its steady, predictable way towards her. It was a familiar, comforting, and utterly modern ritual of trust. The silver Honda Civic pulled up to the curb. She did what she always did. She checked the license plate, JGL8431. A perfect match. She opened the back door and slid inside, a wave of relief washing over her as she escaped the cold rain. The driver was a man in his late 50s with a kind, tired face and a friendly, unassuming demeanor. He looked exactly like his profile picture. "Maya?" he asked, his voice a warm, gentle sound. "That's me," she said. "Thanks for picking me up so late." "No problem at all," he said, pulling away from the curb. "Long night at the library?" "You have no idea," she sighed, leaning her head back against the seat. The trip began with the familiar, comforting rhythm of any other late-night Uber ride. The quiet hum of the engine, the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers, the soft, unobtrusive sound of a classic rock station playing on the radio. He was a good driver, his movements calm and predictable. He took the familiar route, east on Forbes Avenue, through the heart of the sleeping university campus. They were about 5 minutes into the trip when the first, small and seemingly insignificant anomaly occurred. The GPS screen on the driver's phone, mounted on the dashboard, flickered and went dark. "Ah, shoot," the driver said with a small, frustrated sigh. "This new update is a disaster. The app has been crashing on me all night." He tapped the dark screen a few times. Nothing. He let out another, good-natured sigh. "Well, I know the way. To Squirrel Hill like the back of my hand. No need for this thing anyway." It was a plausible, common complaint. Maya had heard a dozen other drivers complain about the app's glitches. She thought nothing of it. Then came the offer. The quiet, reasonable, and utterly devastating offer, the driver said, his tone a casual, friendly suggestion. "You know, since the app is down, the trip is probably going to be unlogged on my end anyway. If you want, you can just cancel the trip in your app. That way, you won't get charged, and you can just pay me in cash what the original fare was. I'll even knock a few bucks off. We both save on the fees. What do you say?" She hesitated. It was against the rules. She knew that, but she was exhausted. Her mind was a fog, and the thought of saving $10, maybe $15 was a powerful lure. The man was friendly. He seemed trustworthy. And he was right, he clearly knew the way. What could go wrong? "Okay," she said, her voice a little too quiet. "Yeah, okay." She took out her phone. She opened the app, her thumb hovering over the cancel trip button. For a split second, a small, quiet, and deeply intuitive voice in the back of her mind screamed, "Don't do it." She ignored it. It was the voice of anxiety, of her over-caffeinated, sleep-deprived brain. She pressed the button. A new screen appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel?" She pressed yes. The map, the car icon, the digital tether that connected her to a verifiable, trackable reality, vanished from her screen. She was off the books. The moment she confirmed the cancellation, the atmosphere in the car shifted. It was a subtle change, almost imperceptible. The driver, who had been humming along to a song on the radio, went silent. The friendly, chatty energy was gone, replaced by a quiet, focused stillness. And then he made the first wrong turn. Instead of continuing straight on Forbes, the main, brightly lit artery that led directly to her neighborhood, he made a sharp right turn onto a darker, narrower side street in Shadyside. She said, her voice a small, questioning sound. This isn't the way." He replied, his voice still friendly but with a new, clipped and slightly dismissive edge. "Shortcut. Forbes is always a mess with the late-night bar traffic. This way is faster, trust me." She tried to relax. He was the local. He was the expert. But the knot of anxiety in her stomach, the one she had so easily dismissed, was beginning to tighten. The new route took them through a labyrinth of quiet, dark and unfamiliar residential streets. The friendly, well-lit storefronts of the main road were gone, replaced by the dark, sleeping facades of old Victorian homes. She took out her phone, a new, more urgent need for connection taking hold. She opened her text conversation with Ben. "Hey," she typed, her thumbs clumsy in the dimly lit car. "Weirdest Uber ride. Driver had me cancel the trip and pay cash. Now, he's taking a strange backroad shortcut. A little creeped out, TBH." She hit send. The small blue progress bar at the top of her screen appeared and then stopped. A small, red, and utterly terrifying exclamation point appeared next to her message. Message not delivered. She looked at the top of her screen. The signal bars were gone. No service. They were in a dead zone. The digital tether, her last final connection to the outside world, was gone. She was completely and utterly alone. The driver made another turn, this one leading them down an even darker, more narrow street, one that ran alongside the bleak industrial landscape of the old railroad tracks near Bloomfield. The beautiful historic homes were gone, replaced by a landscape of crumbling brick warehouses and chain-link fences. The silence in the car was now a heavy, oppressive thing. The classic rock station was gone, replaced by a low, hissing static. She said, her voice no longer a question, but a statement. A statement of dawning and absolute terror. "This isn't a shortcut. Where are you taking me?" The driver did not reply. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. She looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The kind, tired face of the man from the profile picture was gone. The face that looked back at her was a stranger's. A man with cold, dead eyes and a small, cruel smile playing on his lips. He was not Gary. He was a fake Uber driver. The license plate. Had she really checked it, or had her tired, suggestible mind just wanted to see a match? He finally pulled the car into a dark, deserted alley, a narrow canyon of brick and dumpsters, and killed the engine. The sudden, absolute silence was a physical blow. He turned in his seat, and for the first time, he looked directly at her. His smile was a thing of pure reptilian malice. He said, his voice no longer the warm, gentle sound from before, but a low, gravelly, and deeply menacing sound. "You know, the app is a funny thing. It makes you feel so safe, doesn't it? A picture, a name, a license plate, all these little pieces of data that make you believe you're in control." He let out a low, humorless chuckle. "But the moment you go offline, the moment you choose to trust a person instead of the system, you're not in the app's world anymore, you're in mine." He didn't have a weapon. He didn't need one. His weapon was her own profound and absolute isolation, her own terrible and irreversible mistake. She whispered, her voice a dry, ragged thing. "What do you want?" He said, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "I want you to learn a lesson about trust, about the illusion of safety. I want you to sit here in the silence, and I want you to think about all the little invisible threads that were keeping you safe. And I want you to think about how you, with a single simple and greedy little click, cut every single one of them." And that's what he did. He just sat there for what felt like an eternity in the dark, silent car, and he watched her. He watched her cry. He watched her plead. He watched her as the terror slowly, methodically broke her down. He was not a robber. He was not a kidnapper. He was a sadist. A psychological terrorist who got his pleasure not from violence but from the slow, deliberate, and complete annihilation of a person's sense of safety in the world. After an hour that felt like a lifetime, he seemed to grow bored. He started the car. "Okay," he said, his voice flat, dismissive, as if speaking to a child who had learned her lesson. "I think you get it now." He drove her, in a profound and deeply traumatizing silence, to her neighborhood, but he did not take her to her apartment. He stopped the car at the edge of Shenley Park, a vast, dark expanse of trees and shadows, a good mile from her home. "Get out," he said. She scrambled out of the car, her legs trembling. He leaned over, his cold, dead eyes meeting hers one last time. "Don't forget your phone," he said, a final, mocking act of cruelty. He tossed her phone onto the wet grass, and then he sped off, into the night, disappearing as silently and as completely as he had appeared. She found her way home, a ghost in her own city. She called the police. A report was filed. They were sympathetic, but there was little they could do. She had canceled the trip. There was no digital record. The driver, Gary, was a real person, a retired school teacher who had been at home, asleep, the entire night. His account, the police discovered, had been hacked and cloned, likely by a sophisticated syndicate that operated in the dark corners of the internet. The man who had picked her up was a phantom, a ghost who had worn another man's digital skin. She is left with a silence that is a new and far more terrifying kind of quiet. She no longer takes Ubers. She no longer walks alone at night. She is a prisoner in her own small apartment, haunted by the memory of a choice she made in a moment, of exhaustion and weakness. The horror is not in what the man did to her. The horror is in what he showed her. He showed her that the thin, digital safety net that we have all wrapped around our lives is an illusion, and that it can be torn away with a single, simple, and utterly devastating word: cash. Our final story is about the quiet, insidious horror of a trap disguised as a luxury. It's about the small, welcoming gestures, a complimentary bottle of water, a helpful shortcut, that are designed to disarm you, to make you feel safe, right before the cage door swings shut. It comes from a young man named Liam, who learned that in a city built on illusion, the most dangerous predators are not the ones who look like monsters, but the ones who look like a 5-star ride home. At 26, Liam's life was a careful, calculated ascent. He was in Las Vegas for his best friend's bachelor party, a final celebratory weekend before the crushing responsibilities of adulthood truly set in. He was the best man, the responsible one, a financial analyst from Denver who saw the world as a series of predictable, manageable risks. His life was a blueprint for a secure future, a steady job at Charles Schwab, a loving fiancée named Chloe, and a down payment saved for a small house in the suburbs. Las Vegas, with its chaotic, glittering, and fundamentally irrational energy, was a fascinating but ultimately alien landscape to him. He was a man who believed in systems and rules, in the verifiable data of a well-planned life. The weekend was a blur of controlled chaos. They had a suite at the Bellagio, a place of opulent artificial beauty. They had dinners at restaurants with celebrity chefs, saw a show, and gambled with a strict, predetermined budget. It was fun, but for Liam it was also exhausting. By Saturday night, the final night of the trip, he was done. His friends, fueled by the city's relentless energy, were heading to another club. Liam, a man who knew his limits, decided to call it a night. He stood on the crowded, chaotic curb of the Bellagio's main entrance, the famous fountains erupting behind him in a symphony of light and water. It was just after 1 a.m. The Las Vegas Strip was a river of light, of noise, of a million different stories all happening at once. He pulled out his phone and did the sensible, responsible thing. He ordered an Uber Black, a comfortable, reliable, and, most importantly, safe ride back to his own hotel, the Aria, a short, 10-minute drive down the Strip. The app chimed. His driver was Robert, in a black Cadillac Escalade. A professional. The estimated fare was a little high, but for a guaranteed safe ride home, it was a price he was willing to pay. A few minutes later, a pristine, gleaming black Cadillac Escalade pulled up to the curb. The driver, a man in his 50s with a calm, professional face and a crisp white shirt, stepped out and opened the back door for him. The driver asked, his voice a smooth, reassuring baritone, "Mr. Evans?" "That's me," Liam said, a wave of relief washing over him. The car was perfect. The driver was professional. He checked the license plate. It was a perfect match. He slid into the cool, dark, leather and wood-paneled interior of the SUV. The door closed with a solid, satisfying thunk, sealing out the noise and chaos of the Strip. The driver said, getting back into his own seat, "It's a hot night, sir. Would you care for a water? It's complimentary." He gestured to a small built-in refrigerator in the center console, filled with small, elegant bottles of Fiji water. "Yes, thank you," Liam said, genuinely impressed. This was the reason you paid for Uber Black. The small, professional touches that made you feel safe, taken care of. The driver passed a cold bottle back to him. Liam opened it and took a long, grateful drink. The water was crisp, clean, and impossibly cold. They pulled away from the Bellagio, merging smoothly into the slow-moving river of traffic on Las Vegas Boulevard. The driver said, his tone one of quiet, local expertise, "The Strip is a bit of a mess tonight, sir. There's a major convention that just let out at Caesars. If you don't mind, I know a local shortcut. We can take the back roads behind the casinos. It will be much faster." "Sounds good to me," Liam said, leaning his head back against the cool leather. He trusted the driver. The man was a professional. He knew the city. Liam closed his eyes. the exhaustion of the long weekend finally settling over him. The car was quiet, the ride smooth. He felt a profound sense of safety, of being in the hands of a competent and caring professional. He must have drifted off for a moment. When he opened his eyes again, the world outside the window was wrong. The glittering neon canyon of the Strip was gone. They were in darkness, a profound, industrial darkness. They were on a wide, empty street, lined with dark, silent warehouses and vast, empty parking lots. The only light came from the occasional high-pressure sodium lamp, casting a sickly orange glow on the cracked pavement. A cold, sharp jolt of adrenaline cut through the fog of his exhaustion. He asked, his voice a little too loud in the silent car. "Where are we? This isn't a shortcut to the Aria." The driver just glanced at him in the rearview mirror. The warm, professional smile was gone. His eyes in the dim light were cold, flat, and empty. He said, his voice the same, smooth baritone, but now it sounded different. It sounded rehearsed. "We're almost there." Liam's mind, his analyst's mind, began to race, desperately trying to process the new data, the professional driver, the perfect car, the complimentary water, the shortcut, the child lock. The thought was a physical blow. He hadn't heard it, but he knew with a sudden, absolute, and sickening certainty that it had been engaged. He reached for the door handle, his movements a frantic, clumsy scramble. He pulled it. Nothing. The door was locked. He fumbled for the manual lock pin. It was gone. The high-end luxury SUV had smooth, featureless door panels. There was no way to manually unlock the door from the back seat. He was in a cage. A beautiful, comfortable, and utterly inescapable leather and wood-paneled cage. And then he felt it. A new sensation. A slow, creeping numbness, starting in his fingertips, in his toes. A pleasant, heavy warmth, spreading through his limbs. His thoughts, which had been a frantic, screaming siren a moment ago, were now becoming slow, thick, and syrupy. The water, the complimentary bottle of Fiji water. It had been drugged. He looked at the driver's reflection in the rearview mirror again, and the driver smiled, a slow, cold, and utterly terrifying smile of a predator who knows the trap has been sprung. Liam tried to fight it. He tried to yell, but his tongue was a thick, useless weight in his mouth. He tried to pull out his phone to call for help, but his arms were too heavy to lift. The last thing he saw, before the darkness swallowed him, completely was the driver, making a slow, deliberate turn into a dark, deserted alley, a place where no one would ever hear him scream. He woke up to the sound of his own gasping breath. He was lying on a bed. The room was dark, but not completely. A thin, gray light was filtering through the dirty, curtained window. He sat up, his head a throbbing, molten core of pain. He was in a cheap, squalid motel room, the kind of place you see on the forgotten, sun-bleached stretches of the Boulder Highway. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. He was fully clothed, but his shoes were gone, and his pockets were empty. His wallet, his keys, his watch, and his phone, all of it gone. He stumbled to the door. It was unlocked. He opened it and looked out at the bleak, sun-baked landscape of a part of Las Vegas that the tourists never see. He was alive, but a piece of his life, a long, dark, and terrifying piece, had been stolen from him. He had no idea how he had gotten here. He had no idea what had happened during the long black hours after he had passed out in the back of the Escalade. The police, when he finally managed to call them, were sympathetic but not surprised. The story was a new and terrifyingly common one. A sophisticated and highly organized criminal ring. They targeted tourists, specifically single, male, tourists who looked like they had money, leaving the high-end casinos on the Strip. They used a cloned car with a forged but identical license plate. They hacked into the Uber system, intercepting the ride request, a digital ghost that would arrive before the real driver. The driver, the car, the complimentary water. It was all a part of a well-rehearsed and brutally effective performance. They would drug the victim, drive them to a secondary location, strip them of their valuables, and then dump them in a cheap motel to wake up with a headache and a black hole in their memory. He had not been a passenger. He had been a target, the perfect, trusting, and slightly intoxicated Mark. He was left with a knowledge that was a form of a living death. He had not been just robbed. He had been violated. His control, his agency, his own physical body had been taken from him. He now lives with a permanent and deeply unsettling question mark in the center of his own personal timeline. What happened in those lost hours? What did they do to him? He will never know. He is haunted by the quiet, chilling knowledge that in a city of illusions, the most dangerous trick is the one that you willingly and gratefully accept. And he is left with a final and deeply unsettling question. The next time you are alone in a strange city and a kind professional stranger offers you a simple, complimentary, and beautifully sealed bottle of water, will you drink it? A name on a tablet that was a digital key, a canceled trip that was a cut tether to reality, and a complimentary bottle of water that was a chemical cage. These three stories began with one of the most mundane and trusted acts of modern life: calling a car. They all ended with the same terrifying realization. The person behind the wheel was not a driver. He was a predator, wearing the perfect 5-star rated skin of a trusted service. The true horror of the fake Uber driver is not just the physical danger. It is the sophisticated violation of a system we have all been taught to trust implicitly. We check the license plate. We match the face to the picture. We trust the glowing blue line on the map. But these accounts serve as a chilling reminder that every one of these safety features can be faked, cloned, and weaponized. The trap is so effective because it uses the very tools of our security as the instruments of our abduction. These stories force us to confront a deeply unsettling truth about our modern, convenient world. We are, every day, willingly stepping into the cars of strangers, placing our lives into the hands of a ghost in a machine, a disembodied name, on an app. We are betting our own safety on the fragile digital promise that the person who arrives is the person we are expecting, and they leave us with a final chilling question. The next time you're alone, on a dark street at night, and a car pulls up that looks exactly right, how can you ever be sure? If these stories have made you think twice about your next ride, prove you are paying attention by subscribing to Whispered Fear, leaving a like, and sharing this video. Your support helps us to shine a light on the dangers that hide in plain sight. But what if the person you're forced to trust isn't a driver for a 20-minute ride, but a doctor with your entire life in their hands? What happens when they tell you the pain you feel isn't real? Click the video on your screen now as we explore a different kind of betrayal. 3 true scary stories of medical gaslighting and delayed diagnosis. See you there. The doctor will see you now.